Hey guys, my name is Ryan and welcome to Overwatch Central. We have the supposedly Overwatch 2 leaks that Metro's been talking about. Looking at that, I feel like it's a spectrum of right and wrong at this point. There's a few things that do look quite legitimate and line up with a lot of stuff that we've heard, for example from Jason Schreier, but also some bits and pieces don't line up to what Blizzard have already recently been doing, so we'll talk a bit about that. And also I did want to talk about what Michael Chu and Blizzard have said about the lore and story, because that does tie in a lot to these leaks and generally lines up pretty well with what they want to do with story, especially if this new expansion of a game, which is what I'm thinking it's going to be, is going to include PvE elements, which of course will have a big focus on the story. I've seen a few other people sort of mention the Overwatch 2 leaks coming out of Metro, who is a Twitch streamer. That's kind of one of the reasons why I like these leaks. In previous leaks, you have somebody anonymously doing it on 4chan, for example. They're not really putting themselves at any risk. But this is sort of a well-known partnered streamer putting himself out there saying that he knows all of this stuff, which makes me think that if he's wrong, it's kind of like egg on his face. I'll go through each of the leaks very quickly and then sort of break down the ones that I think are most likely and least likely instead of going through every single one. He said that big things are coming from BlizzCon. It will be much bigger than a hero or a map. It's going to change everything. Also said that Overwatch 2 will be PvE and PvP. Somebody asked if it's PvP as well as PvE, will it be replacing current Overwatch? He said, I don't know if competitive will just be moved or if it will be a fusion type of thing. I think it'll be a move, possibly even at the start of next season based on the fact that the game is called Overwatch 2 and not an expansion to Overwatch. That one's a bit, I don't necessarily think that Blizzard would do that. This is a game company that doesn't really like sequels all that much. That's why World of Warcraft is such a good thing for them. Tell me anywhere if they've done Heroes of the Storm 2, Hearthstone 2. They've done stuff like Warcraft and StarCraft 2, but they're very different games. And that's one of the reasons why we haven't seen StarCraft 3. Instead, we've seen a lot of expansions in that area. Granted, they could do a lot more for that game, but Blizzard like to do Overwatch, something else, much like Destiny is Destiny Shadowkeep and Forsaken. They've learned that the smart way, and it's less of a Destiny 1, Destiny 2 thing, have the base game and have the new sequels, I suppose, attached onto there as expansion. And I think Blizzard would do the same thing for Overwatch. I'll go over my theory in a second. The cinematic will feature a lot of heroes, main ones being Mei, Tracer and Winston with a young Genji. Overwatch logo will appear and then the 2 is going to be added at the very end. Crowd goes wild, Jeff gets on stage. This one seems a bit more of a pipe dream, the whole Overwatch and then the 2 logo comes up. Like I said, I don't think that Blizzard ever would lean on the number 2 necessarily, just because they're a company that likes it to just be Overwatch, or if it's a new game, it'll be called a new game, or it could be like Overwatch Talon Forces. I don't know. You get the idea. But the mention of the heroes is very interesting and does line up somewhat really closely with what Blizzard have said in a recent interview, which we'll get to. But that could be legitimate other than the Overwatch 2 part. Overwatch 2 is going to have a leveling system that is going to affect how you play your hero. They also mentioned that they don't think there'll be loot in the game, but there will be a leveling system. So not quite a looter shooter, but we'll have some RPG elements at least. He also mentioned that Diablo 4 and Diablo 2 remastered would be announced. That's pretty legit, I would say. He said it's going to be a new game as opposed to an Overwatch update, and that the leveling system is going to change certain abilities of the hero in the game. I don't know if this is a feature for PvP only or also PvP. For example, he mentioned with Tracer there is an upgrade where the pulse bomb can hit multiple targets. All units close to the target that got stuck will also be stuck with a pulse bomb. Hopefully that's not coming to PvP, somebody mentioned, and I very much agree. That sounds ridiculous, but that'd be cool if they did that. For a lot of abilities to just change how they work in a PvE fashion, that you can make like build videos and how to build like the best Tracer for killing bosses or whatever. This is one that I don't agree with based off what we've seen on the past. Apparently no new hero for Overwatch will be announced at BlizzCon from what they heard. That they're putting all their resources towards releasing Overwatch 2 as fast as possible. Then you have to look at like Sigma. Sigma was a hero that was made fairly late on in the process from Blizzard because they built the skill set for Sigma, right? And they were originally going to have it that Morga was going to be that character, but they realized that Morga's personality and the kind of character that he is didn't fit with Sigma's kit, as you can imagine. So they kind of made Sigma up kind of on the spot to an extent, but he wasn't a character that they had planned for a while. So if they were putting all their resources into doing Overwatch 2, they wouldn't have put out Sigma, because that required a lot of time on their end, the latest stage of Overwatch's lifespan over the past year, in order to do that. But like I said, some of these could be legit, some of them can't be. But my theory on what Overwatch 2 in inverted commas is going to be, I think it's going to be an extension of what Overwatch is currently. Now, the thing is about anything to do with PvE is that the engine barely supports PvE as it is. That's why the archives events are quite lackluster and take Blizzard a long time to be able to do it. They can do maps and they can spawn certain people, but in regards to having a certain amount of enemies on screen, there's only so much that the engine can take before frame rate and performance goes out of the window. It boils down to, if there's going to be a PvE fashion of the game, which is pretty much confirmed at this point based off what Metro said, based off what Jason Schreier said for Kotaku, and other bits and pieces that have been leaked in the past. If it's part of the Overwatch game, then the Overwatch game needs updating in a big way. I don't really know how it works, but it reminds me of when the character models were updating in World of Warcraft. Recently you had Fortnite Chapter 2, which has sort of updated how the game renders. That, but much more. Like, the game needs to be more powerful. I suppose it would be the engine, but there needs to be a way to up that. Transferring all of your PvP content onto this like new iteration of the game, and having the PvE stuff in there too. That was how I would guess it would work, but I have no idea. I used to think that Overwatch 2 would be a completely standalone PvE game that was like Left 4 Dead, but I feel like Blizzard will want to keep it all in one spot. I don't know. Would it be like a drop-down menu in the Battle.net launcher like WoW Classic is for WoW? I don't know. It might be along those lines if I was to guess. So we've kind of gone over quite a lot of stuff there, but I did want to mention what an IGN article says about the story and Blizzard's plans, and it includes an interview from Michael Chu. To quote the article, "The refusal to push the story forward is a source of frustration for many of Overwatch's most dedicated fans, but it's a deliberate move from Blizzard. The team knows exactly where it's heading. There is a present day story, but steps need to be taken before they get there. If this were the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we're very much in phase 1. Overwatch's version of the first Avengers movie is coming, but they need to establish what came first before we can get to that iconic team up scene." Now this actually lines up really well with what Metro was saying, where he mentioned there was going to be a cinematic with Mei, Winston, Genji and Tracer. All of these have been in their own cinematic shots, so maybe it is working like an Avengers film, that you have these characters having their own stories leading up to this big collaboration between the 4 characters that I just mentioned. That actually makes a lot of sense, and it really lines up with what's happened so far. Instead of going through like Lucio and Zenyatta's backstory, as much as I would like to see them, for them to move the story forward with this new game or whatever's at BlizzCon, they're going to focus on the characters that they've already established. That makes sense. But it's still really frustrating that Michael Chu and the rest of Blizzard haven't done anything with the story at this point. So there's a lot of weight on their shoulders to actually do something. But Michael Chu said that they've drawn inspiration from all the big universes and how they weave together. Our game doesn't have the specific linear narrative. We've really looked at how mediums have told stories for their branching big universes. We felt that before we could explore this type of story, we have chosen for the present day to be the sort of main area. It required some setup and some exploration, so it felt like the ground was stable before you moved into the second part. That said, we feel that this phase is coming to an end. We've moved a lot of the pieces that we need to explain into place. So I mean, at least they know that they haven't really been doing a good job, and the lack of cinematics and story recently is not surprised anyone, I suppose. It's kind of par for the course for Blizzard at this point, but if we are going into fresh new territory at BlizzCon, they need to start it big. And I think the idea of the cinematic that Metro mentioned is a good one. I just don't like the whole Overwatch logo comes up and then a 2 comes up next to it. I don't think Blizzard would or should lean into the 2. I think Overwatch 2 is just like a code name or something that people are using to better explain how Overwatch is going into a new area, much like the Fortnite Chapter 2 stuff. The game is very different, but it's not a brand new game where all of the skins that you got in Fortnite you've lost. I think it's going to be very similar to that, actually. These leaks could be utter BS. You know, they could be absolutely trash, completely wrong, but it is getting me excited to see what's at BlizzCon and making me think about what we've heard over the past 6 months in what this new game could be, or this new iteration of Overwatch. Like, it could just be that Blizzard announces a new hero and a new map like they always do, and it's another cinematic that leaves us on a cliffhanger. I don't know, but I'm hoping that it's something big and new like people are talking about. Otherwise, I think Blizzard are in a lot of trouble. Overwatch really needs some love right now. With any luck, gets it at BlizzCon. Regardless, a lot of people have said that this BlizzCon is going to be pretty major in announcements across the board. Diablo, no doubt World of Warcraft, and of course Overwatch. But that's everything I wanted to go over. Quite a lot of stuff in there. I hope you enjoyed the video though, and if you have been at AGX, it was lovely to meet you. We're here today as well, but by the time that this video goes out, we'll be on our way back. But thanks for watching, like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will definitely say that BlizzCon is going to be amazing. Thanks for watching, take care, see you soon.